us, it really started out, and our thinking is pretty simple around this. If you make a product that people really love to use, then that gives you a pretty big tailwind for everything else you would do to spread it. And that's not the only thing you need to do. I mean, we also put a big percentage of our engineering resources into thinking about clever ways to thinking about customer acquisition. So the way we get a lot of our users, and the way a lot of the other sort of fast-growing consumer internet companies have the reach this kind of scale, and faster than any company's ever have in like the history of the world, is really through one, word of mouth. And so if I tell you, we made this referral program where if I tell you about Dropbox, you get some free space and I get some free space, and every month millions of people do that. And then also sort of viral elements of the product, where just in the course of you using it, you bring people into the fold. So PayPal's an example of that, where actually that's what the referral program was modeled after. It's like back when they got started, there was this pretty famous thing where if you get someone to sign up for PayPal, you get $5, or maybe it's either you get $5 or the recipient gets $5. But they had this sort of cash incentive to do this, and I think that was a big part of how they sort of got their first traction. That said, not all of it has worked. I mean, a lot of our early experiments, because again, going back to sort of you're doing this for the first time, you sort of do you're going to try things that are conventional. We're like, okay, we're going to launch the company. All these sort of bootstrappy things we did to get the marketing started are really unprofessional, even though they were working really well. And we're like, we need to go do what every startup does, right? Hire a PR firm, find a head of marketing, and buy search ads and AdWords and do SEO and things like that. And a lot of this.
The word of mouth referral being the biggest one, though.
Well, so we had just launched the company, and we had done a couple of things early on to promote it, and I can talk more about those if you want. But early on, we basically tried a bunch of things, and it's not always clear which ones are going to work. And then it was very clear after a while that the referral program and just making our users really happy got them to spread the word. And it's not just that you can kind of bolt on a referral program and your growth will just magically skyrocket. In our case, I think we're fortunate in that for a lot of people, Dropbox falls into this category of thing where, first of all, like nobody's getting up in the morning wishing they didn't have to carry around a thumb drive or email themselves stuff, right? That's just how computers work. But whether they realize it or not, it's a big problem for people to kind of keep track of all these things. And so when a product comes along and it solves a problem you didn't even know you had, and it actually works, that doesn't happen unlike the Blu-ray player you buy at Fry's and has like a 90-button remote control and you can't figure out how to use it. So something about Dropbox hits that threshold where people like it, and then they like it so much, sort of so unexpectedly, that they tell their friends about it. So that's how I think about it.
Right. So what you're saying is and a problem that everyone has that you're solving it in a very simple and easy way, and so people want to tell their friends about it, as well as you have a referral program that then accelerated that word of mouth program.
And there's also things in the product like shared folders where the 5 of us need to recruit, or the 2 of us need to work on something, and so you become a Dropbox user just as a course of my using the product.
So another element is as more people join the service, it becomes valuable for them together as well. So it's not just about I'm referring my friends. When my friends are on it, it is adding value to me as well.
That's right.
And my friends. So that's another viral component that you have.
Yes, it's more valuable to me it provides incentives to me to recruit all my friends to use it. And a lot of the fastest growing services really had this element of it, and it's something that you should think about, or at least spend a big portion of your time thinking about, not just building a great product, but building in a very fundamental way mechanisms into the product that help it spread itself.
Got it. Now, as they say, luck favors the brave. I mean, in my book, every entrepreneur is a brave soul, but not everyone gets lucky. Right? Has luck been a part of your growth as well, or has it just been pure hard work?
I think luck is part of any company that becomes successful. I think luck is a huge part of it. We were fortunate in that the story could have been pretty different for us in a number of ways. we were fortunate that we were able to find the people, a lot of the great early team that we found. People, one thing people might not realize is that even the very best companies were like severely screwed up in their early days in a lot of ways. And so making mistakes that are painful and not fatal is, there's an element of luck there, making the right mistakes.
Tell us a little bit about those mistakes.
I mean, one of the examples is really some of those experiments that failed, or some of those experiments that failed around customer acquisition, right? They spent all the things that we were sort of deliberately doing to try to acquire customers were like useless, and all the things we were sort of accidentally doing just because they were ideas that occurred to us were doing really well. So sometimes these things happen. And then there's a category of some mistakes that every company goes through.
But I think that's an important point that you just made there. You're saying that some of the things that you're planning weren't really working as well, and some of the things that you didn't expect worked well.
Sure.
But then you had the nimbleness to spot those trends and make sure that you switched your plan and focused on the things that were working.
Yeah.
Rather than, so that's a very important point, I think.
Yeah, and what works for Dropbox is going to be different from what works for all of your companies. I think there's all kinds. You can benefit from this sort of a playbook. So for customer acquisition, for example, right? Social gaming has been sort of an amazing petri dish for all these different ways you can drive engagement, drive customer acquisition, get these services to grow really quickly. But while there are themes of things that work, what works for any two companies is going to be different. And so that context is really important, and just sort of like blindly, or just the fact that there are things out there that have worked for other people does not kind of absolve you from the need to kind of just think from fundamentals, like, okay, well, how is the individual user of my product actually, like, what are their interactions with it day to day? Like, how do they, what do they do day to day with the product that then would spread it around to their friends? And we did some other interesting things in the really early days. We started out promoting Dropbox actually through making these demo videos. And actually, my Y Combinator application, at the same time I posted a video on Hacker News, which is kind of like Dig for startup news, if you haven't seen it before. And actually seeing the response from that, it was fairly easy for me to put that together compared to like making a polished product and putting it in a lot of people's hands. But the sort of response from that video, that just all the people commenting on it and getting excited about it, was one of the big things that encouraged me to sort of to perceive this as something worthwhile, and to encourage me to like quit my job and move out to California and do this, instead of all the other things that was working.
So when you started, obviously, I'm assuming that you didn't expect that you're going to get this kind of growth, 25 million users in just a few years. So what was that inflection point where you realized that, wow, this thing is going to be big?
Sure.
And how did that come about?
So I think there's always like, there's multiple ones along the way. I think that the big ones were the two videos we put together. So literally in my bedroom in Cambridge. So it's kind of funny. I learned how to. So I play guitar and learned how to do some sort of basic recording, and I made video, like just recruiting videos and different things for my fraternity in college. And it turns out that and had to use Photoshop to like make T-shirts and things like that. And then I sort of used those skills in my first company and had to design the website, because we weren't going to pay anybody to do it. So the point is, all these sort of random skills you learn along the way can sometimes come in handy for later. And what I did was, in my bedroom in my apartment in Cambridge, just put together like a 3-minute demo video of just a walkthrough of the product. Because one problem is, one sort of theme, or one sort of common failure mode for a lot of the other things that had been created was they weren't reliable. And actually I spent a big piece of my 20s like discovering that sort of syncing things reliably without like destroying your baby pictures or Excel spreadsheets, which if you went into a lot of the forums of the competing products, you'd have people with these problems. So it's actually it's a hard problem, and it takes a while to really bulletproof it. And so releasing something that was half-baked, you want to launch as early as possible, but in our case, it's kind of mission critical. And so, you don't want to like launch fast and iterate on like a pacemaker, right? So in our case, we could still get the idea across with just putting out a simple video, and it was actually a very low effort way of sort of proving the concept. And whatever you do, you want to learn, you want to confirm as early as possible that you're working on something worthwhile. Because what the worst case is when you spend years of your life on something, just sort of building it in a room, and then when it encounters reality, it turns out to be not something people want. So the demo video in the beginning was really important because it was like, okay, this is something that has potential. And then the second one that we did, we launched our private beta, and we put out a similar video on Dig. And what you want to do when you're launching your company is sort of, for every product or for every service, there's usually some class of early adopters. So if you have a car site, if you have a site about cars, there's going to be internet forums of people that do nothing but talk about cars all day, right? And for anything, right? And so you want to find those communities of people and participate in them, and they're often a great kind of first target for finding your first group of passionate users. And so for us, the kinds of people that use Dropbox were also the kinds of people that looked at sites like Dig and Reddit were kind of classic early adopters who seek out kind of technology for its own sake and like enjoy trying out new things. And I, again, the sort of skills coming out of strange places. I mean, I spent a bunch of time in high school like reading Slashdot and sites like that. So I kind of knew how these communities work. And so what we did was we made a 3-minute demo, but we put in all these Easter eggs that would be familiar to the Dig and Reddit community. So like references to internet memes, like XKCD, and there's a song Chocolate Rain by Tay Zonde, who was like a YouTube star in the early days. References to movies, all these different things, and they were very kind of under the radar. So I was walking through the product in a very kind of deadpan way, but like if you sort of watch the video, like something's going to catch your eye if you're like a Dig reader, and you're like, wait a minute, he just made reference to like Office Space or something that I recognize. And so the point being, that was like a big catalyst. So anyone who saw the video from Dig, even if they were like not that excited about the product, they noticed that clearly the people making this like were part of that community, or at least could speak to them in an authentic way, and they upvoted it, and it was pretty crazy. I mean, we had a beta waiting list of 5,000 people, and literally a day later, it jumped up to 75,000.
Wow.
And so we had been kind of like worrying about this kind of critical mass problem for a long time, because like that's something that every startup deals with, and like to have that solved in one day, it was like pretty ridiculous. And it was just driving hundreds of thousands of people to the site. The link got like 12,000 digs. And it was just a huge, that was really the first moment where we're like, wow, there's like a lot of pent-up demand for what we're doing, and this is actually something that a lot of people can use.
So it's about fulfilling the demand or the need, but it was also some creative ways that you got a lot of users attracted to the service.
Yeah.
And that initial momentum, then you were able to build upon that. While you're talking about it, you also talked about one other thing that caught my attention, which was that you continue to launch quickly and iterate a lot on the service. So expand a little bit more about that in terms of what has been your strategy in terms of launching the product, and are you launching a lot of features very quickly, and how are you deciding your whole product cycle?
So we definitely aspire to launch quickly and iterate quickly. Some parts of the product, it's easier to do that than others. So on the website and things like that, we can actually do that fairly well. But one thing that is maybe distinctive about how we plan these things is we do fewer things, but we try to do them really well. So actually we actually don't launch, we haven't launched dozens of new features and done tons of iterations on these things, and it actually takes longer than sometimes we would like to get some of these things out the door. But one of the invariants that we like to keep is we only want to launch things that are simple and that people can easily use, and things that actually work. I think one trap you kind of fall into, and something that eventually suffocates and kills consumer internet companies, is they just keep adding stuff, right? This was like the AOL Instant Messenger in the early days. It started out really simple, and people loved it because they're like, wow, I can download this thing and I can figure it out. And then now, 5 minutes later, I'm talking to my friends. And then over time, the team gets bigger, and you have all these product managers, and they're like, all right, well, product managers aren't paid to take stuff away. So like, wouldn't it be great if we had like stock quotes in our instant messenger client, and videos and games and like, video chat, and or just like the list. Eventually, the thing gets so like weighted down, and like you look at the front page, and like you get to the point where like, okay, you're downloading AIM to like talk to your friends, and then you actually open it up, and it's like this, NASCAR or Las Vegas, like there's all this stuff coming at you, and you figure out how to do the basic thing you came to try to do. And so I think there have been counterexamples of that recently with companies like Apple and Facebook who are really willing to cut stuff out, and Facebook in particular willing to sort of start their platform, for example, and things like Newsfeed, throw away large swaths of functionality that they spent a lot of time developing because they sort of changed their mind after they learned from their users about what they really wanted, and they were kind of opinionated.
Have you thrown away any functionality yourself?
I don't. There's stuff that we're working on that is going to supersede existing functionality.
So tell us a little bit more about then. What's your roadmap? Where do you go from here?
Yeah. So our vision is really to simplify millions of people's lives, and that's at the heart of it. When we started, things were a lot simpler. Even 4 years ago, right? There was no iPhone, no tablets. People mostly just had like a single computer, like a laptop, maybe some photos to back up, but they weren't like taking pictures with their phone and editing things on their iPads and putting things on Facebook and Twitter, to nearly the same extent they are today. And tomorrow that's going to be, your camera and your TV and your car, and there's just going to be all these billions of things that are connected. And it's really hard for people to keep track of this stuff. There's things like you ought to be able to do, like, it's great that your phone can take like, HD video, but like how many people have actually like seen that then in their living room? And there are all these things that sort of, we would just say this to investors, we're like, look, like Tom Cruise in Minority Report is not like logging into Gmail to pick up the attachment he sends. Right? And he's not carrying around a thumb drive, and he gets over here and over here, and everything just kind of works. And so that's really, to some extent what we're trying to build. It's like to build that there's going to be all these devices and apps and services out there, which today none of them talk to each other. And we think it's a huge opportunity to kind of build the fabric that ties all these things together.
That's great. So in terms of your business model, I know that you have a freemium service and then you have some paid plans. So give us a sense of how well that's working, and are you seeing a lot of people converting from the freemium model to the paid model, and how did you come about creating the pricing model that you did?
Yeah. So I think we looked at some of the other freemium services out there. I think we also just sort of, that was one of the things that was important to me when picking an idea. It was something that people are willing, make something that people are willing to pay for, which was kind of a quaint idea in the height of Web 2.0 when we started. And we've done different iterations on this kind of thing, and different split tests and A/B tests on pricing and whatnot. But we started a business where when you start a freemium business, you expect that most of the users are going to be free users, and that for each paid user that you bring on, that they can subsidize a large number of free users. And fortunately, that kind of worked from day one. And while we don't break out the specifics on the numbers, that the paid side of things has obviously been growing alongside all the rest of the growth. And so the way we think about that is pretty simple too. Just to make something that people that's worth paying for.
So usually, do you see people start out with the free model and then convert over to the paid, or?
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the interesting things about the free model is we're totally fine if you use the free product forever. The business model is sort of designed to expect that most people are going to be free users. But then, if you learn about it, you might not pay for it, but you might refer someone who does.